Has this ever happened to you? You're on Instagram and you come across a 17-year-old and you think, oh cool, this kid already has 3 mansions and $15 million. Let's look at his pictures so I can feel financially insecure and jealous. And then, 30 minutes later, your day is ruined. Yeah, me too. Despite how much I've accomplished, sometimes I can't help but feel financially behind. So in this video, I'm going to tell you 3 ways to get over these feelings. But first, I want to share my personal journey about how I came to this realization. So while you might think that financial jealousy is just some harmless emotion, something that casually happens, it can get really dangerous and end up costing you a lot in the long run. You see, feeling financially jealous of others stem from the belief that opportunity is limited. I want you to imagine these dots in this box as opportunities. You believe that because David or whoever gained an opportunity that you don't have yet, you think that it completely disappears from the box and that you won't be able to get it anymore. You believe that his success robs you of yours and that there are only a few opportunities left for you in the box. And that's how I felt for years. I thought that because this person started that, then I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. And I couldn't stand the thought that they were able to get there and I couldn't. For some weird reason, I felt entitled to everything that everyone else had. Why should I have any less? If they were just a little less successful, then I'd be able to be more successful. So not only did I want what they had, I didn't want them to have it anymore. So at a minimum, in order for me to feel equal to them, I saw 2 options: either bring them down or bring myself up. And since it was way easier to bring others down in my head than it was to work on lifting myself up, that's what I did. So I ended up spending all my energy thinking about all the things that I didn't have. I was blinded. I couldn't see my own skills, my own progress, my own achievements. And the only thing that I was actually motivated to do was to figure out how I can get what someone else already had. I wasn't playing to win anymore. I was just playing to not lose. But then I realized this. We feel financially jealous when we see someone with something that we want. And it creates this gap between where we currently are and where we dream of being. And the way we can get over these feelings of insecurities and financial jealousy is to focus how we react to this gap, both through our own emotions and our actions. Now, here's where I think that we should really reflect on how I currently deal with these feelings of financial jealousy and insecurity when I come across them. But first, if you want to learn how to build a wealthy and healthy life, sign up for my free newsletter, link below. The prime of my financial jealousy was probably in my early 20s, when I finally decided to call myself a content creator or entrepreneur. And what I was most jealous of was other content creators, and specifically how much money and success that they've achieved seemingly without any struggles or hardships. I don't even think a day went by where I didn't come across someone bragging about how much money they made, especially within the personal finance space. I still remember seeing this one guy, I forgot his name, talking about his private jet, his mansion, and his super expensive designer clothes, stuff that I personally couldn't care less about. But for some reason, my mind went into super jealousy mode, and I stupidly decided to write down goals that were heavily influenced by these types of people, which meant that I, on paper, aspired to achieve things that I honestly didn't even want. And just thinking back about this was really sad. I wish I could just go back in time and rip up that list of goals that I wrote down and say, bro, this isn't you. This doesn't matter. You never wanted this flashy lifestyle. They're just making you feel like you want it. But since I can't do that, I'll tell you this. If you're in a similar situation, instead of blindly following others, I completely redefined my personal money and success goals with my FIRE number, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Essentially, this number is how much money that I would need invested so that I can achieve financial freedom and never have to worry about money again, because I could withdraw from this amount to pay for my expenses pretty much forever. You can find your own personal FIRE number with this formula, which is based on a study from Trinity University, where the professors use historic market data to study how much money someone can safely withdraw from their investment portfolio, taking into account when they want to retire. And they found that with nearly 100% chance that someone with a portfolio with at least 50% in stocks can safely withdraw 3% of their investment for 40 years without completely using up their investments. And personally, I figured that as long as I was getting closer to my own personal FIRE number, everything else, every other external influence was just noise. And by the way, if you're terrible at math like me, I actually built a free calculator to help you find your own personal FIRE number, link below. So one thing that took me way too long to realize is that feeling financially jealous isn't about that specific individual or person. It was only about what they had or had achieved, which in this case was wealth and success. And by understanding this distinction, by being able to separate the individual from the possession and achievements, I was able to truly see exactly what I was jealous of so that I could take the appropriate action and steps to build wealth on my own terms. But I had to ask myself, why do I even care about building wealth or becoming rich or making a ton of money? What am I trying to do with all this money that I make? And I realized the easy answer is because I didn't grow up with money. And so therefore I wanted to see what it felt like, what experiences I can experience when I had money. But I realized that that wasn't the real reason why. For a very long time, I struggled with figuring out my why, because the image of what a successful life should look like with mansions, Lambos, and wild parties had been shoved down my throat for years by the media and social media to the point that I had believed in that. But once I changed my environment, aka I stopped watching these types of people's content, there was no one out there to remind me what I thought I had wanted. And therefore, I simply forgot about those people's aspirations and wants. Instead, I was now the sole judge to decide what I wanted when I created my own goals. And I couldn't be happier striving to reach my own why and my own reason instead of striving to reach someone else's. So my real reason for why I want to build wealth is this. I want to be able to give myself and my family a better life, a life without struggle or hardships. But also because having money allows me and gives me the freedom and flexibility to fulfill my big dream. Look, I witnessed firsthand the insane wealth divide when I was just 18. I didn't grow up with much money, but I was fortunate enough to get a good scholarship to go to a pretty good college that was typically attended by the super rich. And for the first 2 years, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong and that I wasn't supposed to be there. I mean, how could I when the entire school culture was based on exclusive fraternities and sororities whose membership alone cost thousands of dollars per semester to join, which obviously I couldn't afford working at the school library. And so I witnessed firsthand just how many more advantages that the rich students had over kids like you and me. Not only in terms of education, but also better networks. Like if they wanted a prestigious internship or a job, either their parents or someone their parents knew was an executive working at that company. And therefore they had a much easier time of landing that job and having a much easier life. So after I graduated, I worked a few years in finance, and at the same time in parallel, I was helping my friends and family with their personal finances. And one day, out of the blue, I realized that I wanted to do something more impactful than just help the rich get richer at my job. And that's what I knew. My big dream is to do everything I can to help close the wealth gap. And that's where this channel came from, to teach others how to build a wealthier and healthier life. So now, whenever I feel inadequate or financially behind, I remind myself that my dream isn't to become infinitely wealthy. My dream is to do my part to help close the wealth gap through financial education. But the thing that helped me the most with feeling financially jealous is understanding this fact. There will always be someone wealthier than you. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the entire world, has less money than Bill Gates, and both of them have less than Jeff Bezos. So is feeling jealous always an indicator that we are missing something that we should want and go after? And if we feel envious, should we try to improve ourselves or our situation? Well, I personally believe that it's better to focus on self-improvement than on harming ourselves or others. But sometimes it's okay to just acknowledge the feeling of financial jealousy without taking action. You can choose to let the feeling pass without trying to change anything, like watching a super cute dog walk by in the park without trying to pet him or her, or without trying to get your own dog. But it's super important to remember that just because we envy something that someone else has doesn't mean that having that thing would make us any happier. In fact, it's kind of pointless to negatively compare yourself to someone else, because your comparisons are infinite. There will always be someone who has more money, who is more successful than you. So rather than focusing on others all the time, I now choose to compare myself to my past self, which is much healthier and more effective. So ask yourself, where were you a few years ago? For me, I was still commuting 2 hours a day to get into the office and working 70-hour weeks. I was absolutely miserable. But today, I finally achieved the freedom to work on my dream. So sure, I don't have 7 mansions and 23 Lambos, not that I ever want that, but I am in a much better place than I was just a few years ago. And acknowledging that makes me really happy. So I want you to think about all your past financial accomplishments and just put all of that into a box. And now, instead of comparing yourself to someone else, I want you to fill up a new box with bigger and better stuff than your old box. But you can only do that if you avoid following this popular financial advice that I personally regret listening to. Click here to avoid making the biggest mistake in your life.